Hi there, my name is Dr. Danny Singh, and I'll be the module leader for Introduction to International Relations, and also the module leader for the MA in International Relations as module called Advanced Theory of International Relations. So the purpose of my brief talk today is to talk about what international relations means to Teesside University in relation to the conceptions of our academics here. So in particular, I'll be drawing on my research interest, which is predominantly within the realms of politics, political science, and international relations. So when you come to Teesside University, obviously you'll cover international relations as a component of politics. So today I wanted to talk about international relations to you all. So there are three main theories of international relations. These comprise of realism, liberalism, and a newish one, which was adopted from 1960s social constructivism of sociology, from the 1990s to international relations, is constructivism. So I'll go through these turn by turn, and then I'll try to amalgamate them in relation to the coronavirus, because I think it's really important, and particularly with the ethos of teaching at Teesside University, and particularly politics, what we try to do is to encapsulate the main theories: political theory, international relations theory, theories of ideology, but then we also apply them to certain contexts. So it may be to do with terrorism, peace, security, human rights, and or health epidemics such as coronavirus. So that's where we teach, but that's the way we publish our research, because after all, if you can't apply theory, it's absolutely fruitless, right? Okay, so in a nutshell, realism is based on states pursuing foreign policy or waging war on other states, and this tends to dictate international relations. So this school of thought is quite archaic. It's based on competition and hostility, and therefore the subordination of morality when engaging with other states. Power is based on usually military power and military stature, as Hans Morgenthau underlines, but additional powers, as Kenneth Waltz later underlined, is based on economic ability and political stability. So all this thinking here is based on competition of states, it's based on fear, it's based on uncertainty as well. So what other states are doing, are they gaining more power than us? Therefore, how can we increase our relative power in comparison to other states and ensure that their powers are more inferior than ours? And the reason why states behave like this, according to realism, is based on the absence of a global authority to control and or constrain certain state behavior. And this is called anarchy. So realists say there's anarchy in the international system. So therefore states obtain their survival and attain relative power to increase the gap with other states. But like I said before, this creates fear, uncertainty with political discrete communities within the international realms. So in contrast, liberalism looks at wealth and power, but more for absolute gain. So what gain can a state attain, particularly when looking at cooperation with other states? So there's some mutual agreements there within states. So can they all gain economically within a trade liberalization movement, like we have World Trade Organization, EU powers trading amongst each other, and also in regulating and constraining the behaviors of atrocity crimes, human rights, and grave violations of international humanitarian law. So therefore, it's a mix of states cooperating, but it also integrates international financial institutions and international organizations and security organizations such as the United Nations or NATO, perhaps. So when looking at constraining and governing the behavior of states, it's putting states in check, and it's also trying to consolidate certain democratic ideals and beliefs that were initiated from former US President Woodrow Wilson. So in his 14-point speech in 1918, he contended that the removal of economic barriers is good to create peace and stability among nations. And later Michael Doyle, had come up with the conception that states that are democratic tend not to wage war with other democratic states. So this consolidates what we call democratic peace. So that's a democratic peace thesis that comes out of liberalism. Now, if we look at constructivism, that's not so much gained on the material advantages that realism and liberalism presents, either individually with the state or collectively within a region of states or international organization. So what constructivism does look at is the ideational politics that will benefit the state. So the ideational politics are based on the morality, ethics, based on just war theory. It could be based on legality, certain culture and history of states, of how they interact. And it creates also less ambiguity with states' actions and or behavior. So you generate this kind of ethos, and other states will gain more certainty in how you behave with other states. So constructivists would say, particularly Alexander Wendt, when writing in the 1990s, he would have contended that even if there's international anarchy in the international system, like realists contend, states still have a choice of how they behave. It's not the system that constrains and controls states' behavior, but rather states behave how they want to choose to. So they choose to behave in 3 dimensions, according to Wendt. So that's, do they want to be a friend with another nation? Do they want to be a foe with them? Or do they want to engage in competition with them? Okay, so now we have these 3 theories. So very briefly, what does this mean in relation to the coronavirus? So if we took the realist strand, we could look at one clear example of US President Donald Trump. Based on relative gain and unilateral action, we could say in his attempt to obtain the CureVac vaccine from German pharmaceutical company by buying exclusive rights for US citizens, that would be trying to protect national security interests over the interests of engaging in mutual cooperation with other states. That would come under realism. Also as well, the lockdowns that we have, and also the economic pressures within our states as well, and prohibiting distributing certain protective and safety equipment to other European states, and therefore some European states have to turn to Beijing for this equipment, or other countries like Turkey that provide them. Yeah. So this is based on the lack of cooperation and engaging in more your self-interest in a self-help environment due to international anarchy. Liberalists would take a different approach with the coronavirus. So they would look at, we need cooperation, particularly with the international risk regulating institution, which would be the WHO, the WHO, World Health Organization. So we need cooperation within that to build a strategy to try and create a more regional and or international vaccine and work collectively at states with cooperation, rather than realists as well also trying to blame in certain lexicon China for the outbreak of the virus and trying to impose certain legal sanctions and economic types of reparation against the state. And constructivists would look at, what does it mean in relation to our state if we show we cooperate with the World Health Organization and other states and try not to pursue too much our unilateral interest? Will that have a benefit for how we look in the international community of states? Or do we need to protect our own vested national security interest because we are primacy of our own well-being, and therefore our state security measures should hold precedent irrespective of looking at liberalist ambitions? So the behaviors and the lexicon, the dialogue, the morality and ethics behind engaging with other states and international organizations would come from constructivism. And another argument slightly emerges from this. So what we could say, if we're blaming China, so the US trying to blame China for the outbreak of coronavirus due to illegal animal trafficking from Malayan pangolins that reached horseshoe bats in Wuhan and spread in the wet markets. So if we're trying to blame there and Australia trying to create investigation on China, then what are the repercussions of that? Obviously, Beijing have responded saying that they would engage in economic coercion, meaning that there would be some type of economic alleviation of interest. So China said they would stop engaging in certain trade with the Australian government and also avert to sending their students to Australian universities. So constructivism looks at these kind of relationships more based on identity rather than material politics. I sincerely hope that you found this talk interesting in relation to covering the three main strands of international relations.